Alright guys, I promised you some of the good news. Well, here we go. Ukrainian army entered the Kucherov Yar, the place where Russians were trapped for already more than 1 month. We might check the advancement. It was yesterday and it is today. So the final decision was made by Ukrainian military commander of this sector that it's time to nail down Russians in Kucherov Yar. And yeah, there was the presence of the Russian infantry. Russian army tried even to supply their positions in Kucherov Yar, mostly with the help of the drones. They dropped some water, food, munition, but everything of that is just useless because Ukraine entered Kucherov Yar, and it's a matter of hours, I would say, even then Ukraine establishes its own control there. Well, at least in the coming days, I expect that all of this entire territory will be blue. And also Russians struggle in this direction. Let's go to the Frontline review yesterday and today. You see, yeah? They're losing this territory and they're further away from Zoloty Kolodes, the place where Russians managed to penetrate Ukrainian defense line before. If we take the map update from another analytics, Ukrainian Witness, they show, yeah, definitely Ukrainian soldier is putting Ukrainian flag. Kucherov Yar is at least partially liberated. Awesome news, just fantastic, so it shows that definitely the Russian assault operation to break Ukrainian defense completely miserably failed. Some of the analytics like Noel reports, they say that Kucherov Yar was already liberated. Yeah, we'll see tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, then we get more of the drone images. And yeah, it looks like the remaining Russian soldiers in Kucherov Yar, they just surrendered to Ukrainian army, judging on this drone video. So absolutely great job done by our guys. The Micro Center 3 Analytic publishes something like that, so for the last 24 hours, Ukraine definitely advanced towards Kucherov Yar, but here his information is mostly as in a deep state military map update. Plus in the south here, Ukraine gets more territories. You can see this blue area expansion. But at the same time, you may see that Russians are trying to advance from Novotoretsk towards Mayak, and also they got this part of the field under control. Before they had numerous of the attacks here using convoys of the vehicles, and all of them were burned by Ukrainian army, burned down. And still Russians are unable to take Vladimirovka or Shakhova. Well, the situation here is, I would say, after all, is better for Ukraine. Well, if we go to the Pokrovsk itself, the Russian small offensive there with a limited amount of the forces failed, and it has been confirmed that this territory of this district, probably industrial one, is under Ukrainian control still. So even though Russians here went to the southern part of the city with the main forces, but they cannot propel very fast here, and for the last couple of days I don't see any sort of the movement. Well, at least from the Russian side. But where Russia moves is in this area, Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk direction. Let's zoom into the place. I want to show you the timeline. It was yesterday, it is today. So every day they're taking the ground. Today they advance from Poltavka. They expand this gray area further away. It's kind of the big gray area. It is not a good sign. Plus, in the northern part, they go closer to the river of Vovcha and maybe even crossed it to Ivanivka, so yesterday and today. Yeah, the situation here is not really good and it requires additional reinforcements from Ukrainian side, but Ukraine is very limited in its resources. The most capable Ukrainian army groups are already fighting in Pokrovsk Dobropilla direction. In that particular spot, it was crucial to stop the Russian offensive, but here I would say it's not enough forces for now. Ukraine still has some of the reserves, but not all of them could be used at once, because maybe Russia is waiting for Ukraine to use that kind of the strategy to exhaust the Ukrainian army completely. So the tactics now is the same as from, for example, Bakhmut. Ukraine leaves the position, causing Russians severe losses, and the Russians propel, but again very, very slowly. Well, here, unfortunately, I expect Russians to reach Pokrovsk. Well, not this year, but the next one they could do it during the springtime. From Pokrovsk, here goes the line of Ukrainian defense throughout those villages, I guess. And I hope that after all, it would be possible to stop Russian army assault at this line. On the south, we have some of the update coming from the Mayakovsk. You can see Russia used lots of the vehicles. Already discussed with you the failed Russian attack attempt towards Malotokmachka. Most of the vehicles were kaputted in red and gray zone. A couple of them went to Malotokmachka itself, but later on were kaputted. The same goes for Robotine and Nesteryanka. Russia has absolutely crazy losses. For a single day, they lost more than 30 of the vehicles. It is crazy. But that's the usual strategy of the Russian army, to continue to attack using the mid waves. Some of the additional images were published from the failed Russian attack attempt towards Malotokmachka. There is some sort of the Ukrainian drone operation on the Russian vehicles and the Russian infantry. I cannot show you the entire video here, but it was definitely a devastation of the Russian units out there. In this place especially, it was something outstanding because there are not many areas where Russians could hide, not many tree lines. And yeah, as usual, there's no any day without hitting Russian refineries. Let's watch this video. Kaboom! This one happened in Dagestan, Makhachkala, Russian Federation. 1,130 kilometers away from Ukrainian border, and the Russians were unable to intercept a Ukrainian drone. Well, this refinery is not the biggest one in Russia. The capability is 1 million tons per year, but still it's very crucial for this Caucasus region of Russia. And as I say to you many of the times, if something happens in Russia, I mean internal clash, it would start from the northern Caucasus. So destabilization of this Russian region is very important. Then locals will not have fuel. Oh my god, they all drive cars, they like to do it. Also in Saransk, Russian Federation, there were some of the kabooms yesterday night. Smolensk, the local power plant, got on fire somehow. Bryansk as well, some of the electronic substation, the small one but still. And what is also very interesting, the oil facility in Europe. For example, this one is located in Bratislava, and it is also connected to some of the Russian companies. The oil enterprise MOL in Slovakia. So just for the last couple of days, 3 of the oil facilities in Europe connected to Russia were kaboomed. And I do not believe in this coincidence. Someone is doing it. Who? Hard to say. I don't think that it's Russia, but I also don't think that it's Ukraine, because for Ukraine it's also not profitable. Because if Ukraine is accused of those actions on territory of the European Union and NATO, it's not a good thing, especially for Ukrainian military support. Well, Russia also attacked Ukraine the last night. There were numerous of the strikes on the Ukrainian, even civilian infrastructure. And for example, in Kharkiv, Russians hit kindergarten. For now, I am out of the information whether there were some of the casualties among minors, but what I know that in Kyiv Oblast, one of the missiles hit the residential building, a household, and one family was unalived, including one infant, one child, mother, and grandmother. It's crazy. Russians have a new tactics. They no longer launch their cruise missiles from strategic bombers. Well, at least it was not in this case, because they understood if they fly their bombers, Ukraine is getting prepared for the strike. Well, here attacks mostly happen abruptly, simultaneously using drones, and some of the even ballistic missiles plus Kinjal hypersonic missiles were launched by Russian MiG-31 planes. Plus also Ukrainian energy infrastructure was hit, and now there are lots of the blackouts for tomorrow also planned even in the capital city of Kyiv. And in most of the regions of Ukraine it's going to be hard, and this winter itself is going to be tough compared to the previous one. Putin escalates not just against Ukraine, but against entire world. Today he started the nuclear military drills, which involve everything: strategic aviation, nuclear submarines, and obviously ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. One of those missiles, I think it's named Yastin, was launched towards the direction of the United States of America. Just a reminder to Donald Trump that who is the boss out here. Plus Russia sent the official notice to the White House stating that it is not willing to agree on the current ceasefire conditions proposed by the White House and Donald Trump personally. Then Donald Trump stated that it's better to freeze the current situation on the front lines, that everyone should go home and so on. No, Russia insists on the full occupation of at least those territories which they officially put in the Russian constitution. But I would say that they think to go even further, because what's the use of their forces deployed in Kharkiv Oblast Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, because those regions are not in the Russian constitution. Well, the trick with the fake referendum was just done for public, for PR. The main aim of Putin is to occupy Kiev and Ukraine and put the puppet government like they did with Lukashenko. Yeah, now Russians even may vote for Belarus president. Crazy. Well, I think after all, the White House, at least the part of that administration, including Marco Rubio, they start to understand that something is going wrong with Putin, that he is not ready for ceasefire, and maybe let's press him more. So here we have the breaking news published by the Wall Street Journal just right now. United States lifts key restrictions on Ukraine's use of the Western long-range missiles. Here we speak about Storm Shadow, Scalp, and maybe ATACMS. And definitely yesterday night on the strike on Bryansk, there was Storm Shadow missile used. And even though this missile has been produced in Europe, but still it uses some of the components of American military factories. So United States may restrict the use of this weaponry, which they did before, even under previous White House administration. But now Ukraine may strike, I guess, everything it wants, and there are no restrictions. Moreover, United States will continue to provide Ukraine with additional intel about the targets on Russian territory. Some sort of the escalation coming, which is good. Escalation, I mean, from Western democracies, including USA. So those are the great news. There is some of the kaboom even in Chelyabinsk. That is outstanding because it's really, really far away. Yeah, definitely some of the facility. I think it's called Plasmas Enterprise, something like that. It is a military facility. They make some of the plastic parts for Russian munition. Ukrainian SBU modernized some of the drone boats. This is the Grad system probably installed on top, at least partially. Sea Baby drone, yeah. And what we have here, probably air defense cannon. I think Ukraine already used that one somewhere in Novorossiysk port. Yeah, Ukraine definitely mastered the drone production, including drone boats. I think Ukraine has the best modifications of those. And what is this? Oh, sanctions were agreed tonight, the 19th package since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Great, there should be pressure on Russia created from everywhere, but the most effective sanctions actually are applied by Ukraine. I mean those drone strikes on Russian refineries. But Russia plans to defend their refineries using big balloons and some of the nets around them. Well, this project could be logical, and for Ukraine it would be very hard to penetrate this kind of the defense. So we'll see if Russia is successful implementing this one in real life. Oh, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary of the United States of America, has announced about some of the new Russian sanctions which could be applied. So let's listen to it.
So we are going to either announce after the close this afternoon or first thing or first thing tomorrow morning a substantial pickup in Russia's sanctions.
Some substantial pickup on the Russian sanctions tomorrow. Well, I'm eagerly waiting for it. Looks like Donny was harassed a little by Putin's behavior, then maybe they spoke about different stuff before, almost agreed on a meeting in Budapest, but later on Putin just wants what he wants, and he doesn't care about Donald Trump. He uses Donald Trump as his personal puppet weaponry. So far successfully. I just hope that Donny applies something on Russia. Well, as usual, he might tackle at any moment, usually the very last moment. The main idea for Putin is just to extend the time with those negotiations, meetings, calls, and so on. But he does the same stuff what he does in Ukraine, targeting civilians, as you saw today, in this review. Just crazy stuff happening. The move to release all of the restrictions for Storm Shadow and Scalp, it is great. It should have been done years ago, but at least today we have it. My friends, please check out my channel Dennis Davida for another videos. For example, I filmed about Gripen fighter jets, which were agreed to supply for Ukraine. 150 of the units, crazy, but unfortunately it will take so much time for those to arrive. Nevertheless, it's the great move. And my friends, thank you so much for continuing your support on Patreon and also on membership of the channel. Without your support, my job wouldn't be possible. So thank you for it once again. And guys, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.